Hi, everyone. We'll get started here. Welcome to the webinar, Strategies to Strengthen Family Childcare, Addressing the Decreasing Number of FCC Providers. Please share your name, role, and state in the chat pod as you are joining the call. A few housekeeping items before we get started. Because of the number of people on the call, we have muted all participant lines. Please use the chat pod for questions and comments throughout the call today. This call is being recorded, and if you are having any audio issues, we do have an Adobe technical help slide to the right of your screen to answer some common technical questions, and then of course you can use the chat pod as well to reach out. And now I will pass it over to Laura Johns to get us started.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Laura Johns. I'm the Project Director for the National Center on Early Childhood Quality Assurance. And it's really exciting to be on this webinar with you today and to recognize so many names of people who have joined us. Now, well over 100 participants on the line who are interested in this topic. The National Center on Early Childhood Quality Assurance is a center that supports states and community leaders and their partners in the planning and implementation of system-wide approaches to health, safety, and quality in all early care and education settings for children birth to school age. The center's expert staff uses a variety of collaborative approaches, and I know many of you are familiar with our staff and have worked with us as we have helped to advance strong health and safety standards and licensing regulations that align with the Child Care and Development Fund and Head Start performance standards. Our team works to encourage the development of policies and practices that are culturally and linguistically responsive in states and territories. And we also provide states and territories with the support that you need to develop and enhance your quality initiatives, including your quality rating and improvement systems. And of course, this year we've been spending a lot of time with states and territories and tribes helping to enhance your quality assurance systems through the use of technology and data analysis and research that promotes continuous quality improvement. So again, we're really excited to have everyone here. And please remember that the Quality Center as a national TA center is literally a phone call away to being able to provide you with the support that you need to improve quality in your state, territory, or within your tribe. And you can access us through your state system specialists. And if you don't know who your state system specialist is or how you can access us, we can always have you reach out to us after this webinar. You're going to get our contact information, and we can connect you with the state leadership and see how we can support you. I believe we now have Shannon Christian on the phone, and I'm really excited to introduce her to open today's webinar. Shannon serves as the Director of the Office of Child Care at the Health and Human Services Administration for Children and Families. So she's the director of that office. And she has previously served as the Associate Commissioner of the Child Care Bureau at ACS, where she advanced President Bush's Good Start, Grow Smart Early Childhood Initiative and shaped the office's research agenda to better support state policy and spending decisions. Shannon is committed to effective prevention strategies. And in that role, in her roles throughout her career, she has really overseen a lot of initiatives, including the launch of Illinois' home visiting program, and was on the an active board member on the Be Strong Families, a Chicago-based nonprofit. Earlier in her career, Shannon was part of the former Wisconsin governor's and current HHS Secretary Tommy Thompson's Welfare and Reform Team, serving as head of the planning section in the State Health and Social Service Department, Office of Policy and Budget, and as senior advisor to the Secretary of Workforce Development. Shannon, we're really excited to have you on this webinar. We know this is a topic that you care so deeply about, and it's really wonderful to have your leadership and your guidance as we support states and territories and tribes in thinking about how they can impact a better supply of high-quality family child care settings. So I'll turn it over to you, Shannon.
Okay, thank you, Laura. Can you hear me? Are you able to hear me? Okay,
Loud and
great.
clear.
So
Absolutely.
I'm here to provide a little perspective, and Laura is absolutely right. This is one of our top priorities and has been for the last 2 years since I got here. And I imagine that those of you attending this webinar probably already have a good understanding of the critical role that family childcare plays in supporting families, both allowing parents to work and go to school, especially families that need care during non-traditional hours or are living in rural areas or have infants and toddlers, and families who have children with special needs. You have likely already seen a decrease in your area of the number of family child care providers, whether it's state, territory, or tribe, and are probably interested in retaining the family child care providers that you have, as well as learning more about how you might encourage more family child care at the same time. So today, though we have more theories than conclusive research to call upon, we will explore some of the issues that may be contributing to the decrease in the number of family child care providers and share some strategies for recruiting, supporting, and retaining family child care providers and helping ensure that families continue to have a range of viable child care options that meet their needs and preferences. I encourage you to take advantage of the technical assistance offered to states, territories, and tribes, and to continue working to identify supports and services that can help improve the access to and sustainability of family child care. Meanwhile, those of us in central office in the TA centers and our research arm will keep up the research and inquiry into understanding the decline and how to reverse it, and keep you posted on whatever we learn. So now I'll turn us back over to your facilitator for today, Michelle Adams.
Thanks so much, Shannon. Hi, I'm Michelle Adams, a Quality Assurance Specialist with the ECQA Center, and I'm joined today by my colleague, Nancy Von Bargen. Nancy's a consultant with the ECQA Center, and she'll be sharing information about the possible reasons behind the decrease and some strategies that states and territories and tribes can use to address the availability of family child care. Nancy's worked for ICF for 12 years. She's been providing technical assistance to states on quality initiatives and licensing on behalf of the Office of Child Care. Her prior experience includes serving as a CCDF administrator for Oklahoma, where she supports many innovative quality improvement projects and a robust licensing program. Nancy's a strong proponent of family child care, as evidenced by the close friendship that she's maintained for over 35 years with the family child care provider who cared for her sons. I'm also pleased to welcome Lacey Kottkamp. She's the Director of Child Care Policy, Office of Early Childhood and Out-of-School Learning with the Indiana Department of Family and Social Services. With over 10 years experience in early care and education, Lacey has worked in a variety of roles, including preschool teacher, child care director, quality initiatives director, and Indiana's Head Start State Collaboration Director. She currently leads a team of professionals working on implementing quality improvement policy and initiatives to increase access to high-quality child care. Lacey's also served as a governor-appointed member of the Indiana Early Learning Advisory Committee. Welcome to both Nancy and to Lacey. So glad you could be here with us today. But before we get started, Sarah's putting up a poll question, and we'd like to know what you hope to learn from today's session. If you'll take just a few minutes to respond to the poll, we'd appreciate your input. Wow. It looks like most of you are really interested in exploring all of the options that we provided, which includes reasons behind the decrease, strategies to address the decrease, the impact on families and children, all of which we'll be addressing today in the webinar. So thanks for responding and helping us to better understand your interest in the webinar. And thanks, Sarah, for helping us with the poll. We can go to the next slide. The information that's shared today will be included in our brief addressing the decreasing numbers of family child care providers. It's scheduled for release this spring. Nancy, some of our participants have indicated in the chat box that they're very interested in understanding the decrease and certainly implementing some strategies to help circumvent that. You've recently done quite a bit of research on the information that's available on this topic. So thanks for joining us today to share what you've learned about the issue.
Thanks, Michelle, and good afternoon or good morning to everyone. I really appreciate the opportunity to visit with you today on a topic that is so crucial to our profession. I think that the most startling thing that we learned was the size of the decrease in the number of family child care homes that states, territories, and tribes have experienced over the past 6 or 7 years. And that decrease includes both licensed and license-exempt homes, as well as a decrease in the number of family child care providers receiving subsidy payments. So this graph illustrates really the dramatic decrease nationally in the number of small family child care homes between 2011 and 2017, and that's the green line at the top of the graph. It's a 35% decline, but for me it sounds even more worrisome when that's translated into a loss of over 54,000 home providers. I would also point out that the number of child care centers, which is shown in gold, the gold line, and large family child care homes, and that's the blue line, they have also decreased, but only slightly in the same time period. So that's by 2% and 8% respectively. When we look at the national data from the Administration on Children and Families over the past 6 years, the number of all child care providers receiving Federal Child Care and Development Fund or CCDF payments has decreased significantly by 41%. But this drop has been particularly steep for license-exempt providers at 55%. And the number of licensed family child care providers receiving CCDF payments has also decreased by 33%. If you combine the numbers of lost license-exempt and licensed family child care homes receiving CCDF funding during that 6-year period between FY 2011 and FY 2016, it's an overall loss of almost 146,000 family child care providers. And obviously that means that families receiving CCDF support have far fewer options for child care. Nationally, about 1 in 4 children, 25%, receiving child care funded by CCDF funding are cared for in family child care settings. We know that family child care is an important option, particularly for families seeking infant-toddler care, for parents with non-standard work hours or variable work schedules, for the care of children with special needs, and for families in rural areas where family child care is often the only type of care available. According to research released by the Urban Institute, these populations represent a large percentage of working families with children younger than 6. And because of that, and as Shannon shared, meeting the needs of these families has been identified as a priority within the Federal Child Care and Development Block Grant, and it's becoming an increasing priority for states, territories, and tribes. Families choose family child care for many different reasons, but here are a few advantages of family child care that often appeal to families. Home settings may have more flexibility in responding to the needs of families, whether that's non-traditional hour care or maybe even care for a sibling group. Home settings provide an intimate, family-like setting that's often compatible with the cultural and linguistic preferences of children and their families. And as the diversity of our population increases, this becomes even more important. Family child care offers the opportunity for both a child and their family to develop a one-on-one relationship with a single caregiver. And as Michelle noted in my introduction, those relationships can really sustain you as a new parent and then for many years afterwards. Families may also choose family child care as it may be less expensive than center-based care. Child Care Aware of America reported that in 2018, the national average annual cost of care for a center-based program was $10,408 compared to $8,889 for family child care. And that can really be a significant difference for many families.
Those numbers are quite alarming.
Yeah, I know.
Tell us more about how the decrease has impacted providers. The decrease of providers has impacted families and children.
Okay. Children because we know the importance of those early relationships, there's always some concern about the impact on children who lose their trusted provider and familiar setting when providers leave the profession. As Shannon said, there isn't much research available on the impact, but it certainly narrows the options families have to meet their child care needs. And this is especially true for families with specific needs or preferences. We hope that you will begin to assess the impact on families by reviewing your data and asking some of these questions that are included in the brief that Michelle mentioned. Has the number of licensed family child care providers changed over the last 5 years? Is the available care located in places where it's needed? What do families do when they can't access the care that they need? Has the use of illegally operating family child care homes increased where there's been a decline in the number of legally operating family child care providers? And what is the average length of time caregivers stay in the profession? So answering these and other questions that you identify will help you to have a better understanding of your family child care provider community and how it's supporting working families and also a strong state economy.
Nancy, tell us a little more about what you've learned about. Go ahead, Laura.
Michelle, thanks for letting me interrupt, but I just had to interrupt because there were a couple of questions in the chat box that I think they're burning questions. And so Diane in Pennsylvania asked about the loss numbers that you shared early on, Nancy, and wanted to know if that was a net loss. I think it's important that we say now, instead of making people wait, that this is a net loss number that we're looking at regarding the decline in providers. And then something else that came up that I wanted to make sure we addressed before you went on, Nancy, was somebody was hoping that we could repeat the numbers regarding the cost of care. And I'm pretty sure that I was hearing you say that in 2018, Child Care Aware of America reported that for center-based programs, the cost of care was about $10,408, and that's compared to family child care, which was a little over $8,889. So I just wanted to make sure we got to those burning questions before, Michelle, you went on to your next question for Nancy.
Yeah, those numbers are correct, Laura, and thanks for interrupting me. So interrupt me when I just keep going and questions come in.
Thanks to both of you. So Nancy, we know that you've learned more about providers leaving the profession. We know we still have additional research that needs to be done, but you've learned some interesting information.
Yeah, as I'm sure everybody knows, family child care providers are a very diverse group. So there's a variety of reasons for their leaving the profession. And while there are several states that have collected data on the key factors that contribute to the decrease, I would say that it's unlikely that any one reason can be identified as the lead cause. But looking across the data collected from several states, and some of them have anecdotal survey responses that they've collected from providers, here are some of the causes. So low income and lack of benefits for providers, that's no surprise, and it's an issue that we've struggled with for years, but we have to always come back to it. Lack of business expertise, and really that inexperience can result in uncollected tuition and cash flow problems that make them less financially sustainable. Demands of the job, which we know are many, but things like working long hours, having to balance work and family in your home, and also feeling isolated during much of the day. There can also be local challenges such as zoning requirements and a lack of affordable housing or a lack of affordable insurance. Some states have observed an overall decrease in home ownership, which can make compliance with facility requirements more difficult, but also an increase in shared housing with an extended family or with roommates, which obviously can pose some challenges as well. We hear a lot about providers aging and retiring and not being replaced by new providers entering the profession, and that would really be for all of the reasons that we're discussing. On our first webinar, a participant from Vermont shared that they looked at their data over the last 7 years, and they found that the family child care homes were not closing at a faster rate than previously, but the rate of people coming into the field was what had decreased. So obviously we need to do a better job both with recruiting as well as retaining providers. And lastly, a lack of respect or recognition for the profession and for providers, and I think this may be especially true for home-based providers. We don't seem to appropriately value our teachers, especially for those teaching and caring for our youngest children. Some states also noted multiple and changing requirements, such as background checks, which I'm sure you've heard, difficulty navigating quality improvement systems, and oftentimes those are designed for center-based care, and then difficulty accessing professional development opportunities. And I think what makes this more complicated is that it really is unclear whether providers are closing their doors, whether they're reducing the number of children in care, or they may be operating illegally without a license. So to really understand the root causes for the decrease, which can vary by location and by economic conditions, we hope that states and territories will study their administrative data and collect information from family child care providers to better understand the challenges they're facing and why they are leaving the profession. So having this information for different communities within your state or territory is really important as you begin planning the strategies that you hope will be a successful response.
Nancy, will you go ahead and share some of those strategies that states can use to retain the providers and increase access for families?
Yeah, I'm very happy to do that. We've set forth the problem and now we need to move to solutions. So there are a lot of strategies, but I want to start by emphasizing that family child care providers often feel overlooked or misunderstood. So using focus groups, listening sessions, and ensuring that you have family child care representation on planning and advisory committees can help you identify issues and challenges impacting your providers. So first of all, we need to do a better job of increasing awareness of family child care as an option. So media and outreach campaigns, and certainly a well-designed consumer-friendly website can be very effective in helping families understand and evaluate their child care options that best meet their needs. You should look at housing barriers and maybe educating communities on how child care contributes to their strong economy, and that may help ease some of the barriers to family child care that arise from zoning laws and restrictions on operating small businesses in residential properties. So community-based responses and solutions. Assess the impact of regulatory changes, and this is true anytime you revise policies or licensing requirements, but it's especially important for family child care providers who often don't have a voice. So during any revisions to requirements, you should gather feedback directly from the family child care population on the impact of new rules on their ability to comply and to operate successful programs. On our first webinar, a participant from California shared that they had done a survey and they found that providers were very frustrated with increased regulations, especially when they didn't get more compensation or respect in return. Adopt responsive subsidy policies and comparable payment rates. So when family child care providers face financial hardship because they accept child care subsidies, they are obviously going to be less likely to serve those families, which then further limits family choice. An incentive to accept subsidy payments might be implementing policies and payment practices similar to those required by providers that don't accept subsidy payments. And we know there are other subsidy policies as well, and we can talk about those afterwards or in another paper, because we have a lot of good information from the Subsidy Center on incentives. Ensure meaningful inclusion in quality improvement systems. So again, talk to your family child care provider community when you are establishing or you're evaluating your quality initiatives, and find out if their criteria are attainable for family child care providers and if they're meaningful for the children in care and their families. And then also look to encourage providers' participation in other opportunities like the Child and Adult Care Food Program and Head Start partnerships.
Nancy, I wanted to point out that Sarah typed into the chat box some information and a link to our QRIS resource guide, which was developed by our center, which addresses the inclusion of family child care in quality improvement systems and the types of incentives that will encourage family child care provider participation.
So I know that people are, thanks for pointing out that the website, Michelle, and for really highlighting the website. And I do want to continue to ask people to continue to have their conversations and their questions in the chat box, and we will continue to be answering those as we go along, and we'll take some time at the end to also answer those. And I know that many of you listening, as Nancy was talking about why providers are leaving the profession, and then she really helped us think about some of the strategies for retaining family child care providers. I know that so many of you listening are working on initiatives to retain or maybe even to recruit family child care providers. And so we hope that you won't keep those initiatives a secret. So we would love to have you chat in the chat box the initiatives that are happening in your state. They're really targeted at either retention for family child care providers or recruitment, because we'd love to contact you and hear what you're doing so we can share that with other states, territories, and with the tribes. So please don't be shy in the chat box. It's our way of connecting with you. So we appreciate that. And Nancy, I was really intrigued by all of your strategies for retaining. And as we think about retaining and recruiting, on our last webinar, we talked a little bit about the fact that we don't often recruit family child care providers through our technical colleges and community colleges and our four-year institutions who are educating the workforce of tomorrow. That a lot of people who move into those formal education systems are moving in to think about being a teacher in an early care and education program, or they're thinking about joining the pre-K workforce as a teacher, or they're thinking about administration and running a child care center. And so we really hope that our higher ed colleagues who are training our workforce will be partners in talking to people about the advantages of being an entrepreneur and operating a family child care home and being able to provide to a small group of children a really robust educational and nurturing experience. So I wanted to make sure we brought that back up as another strategy, more on a recruitment strategy, but also thinking about retention there.
Laura,
Yeah, I'm glad you.
and I'm. Go ahead, Nancy.
Okay. Oh, I was just going to say I'm really glad Laura brought that up, because I don't know that we have aggressively reached out to educational institutions, really including high schools, to make sure that people look at this as a viable and really wonderful opportunity, whether, it's somebody who's retired from their career or it's a parent who wants to stay at home with their children. I know that the child care resource and referral agencies have done a lot of work on recruitment, but I think we need to really return to that. I remember many years ago we had a campaign called Love for a Living, and it almost has to be, a very well thought out intentional campaign if we're going to turn this decrease around.
Yeah, Nancy, I mean, I agree, and I'm in Georgia on this beautiful sunny day here in Georgia, and our high school programs who are helping high school students graduate with their child development associate credentials, I think are a huge opportunity for us to think about people who can become mentees in a family child care home. They can be extra support after they graduate, and we'll give them kind of maybe some apprenticeship opportunity to think about whether or not they are interested in moving into that role as they mature and have the opportunities in life. I want to point out a couple questions that have come through the chat box. One of them was about the effects of the increasing reliance on technology for completing applications and forms and training and on the family child care supply. And we've actually done a lot of talk about that in some focus groups, and we don't hear a lot of information about that being a huge barrier, because smartphones and most applications are now smartphone friendly, and so people are able to navigate that. But I also think that our resource and referral agencies and our early care and education hubs that are popping up all over the state, those places, that one-stop shop for providers and consumers to go to get information, are providing a lot of opportunities for providers to come in and fill out applications in-house and get technical support. So I wonder, Michelle or Nancy, if you've been hearing anything more about technology and how it's affecting supply.
No, I know that there are some states who are trying to simplify the application process by having online forms, but I've not heard how successful that has been with the family child care population specifically. But it's, we worried a lot about internet access initially, but it seems like more and more communities now have access, so you really could have a statewide online training program that would be accessible.
Yeah, and again, I think that we're hearing so much, and Kathy, thanks for reminding us about the huge growth in our shared services networks and our hubs, in our family child care networks that really do provide a lot of technical support and places to go when people are either confused by paperwork or they're struggling with technology. I was recently in a state where the local libraries have been amazing places for providers to go in and get on a computer, and the library staff helps make sure they can access applications. So I think even people are accessing their public libraries, which seem to be in walking distance to a lot of neighborhoods. So I think that's important to talk about how shared services is also providing some support for technology and just getting into the application process. We had another question about parent consumer attitudes and whether or not we have any research on attitudes change to parents and whether or not they are seeing the value and the positive benefits of family child care, and whether or not we have done any research on again, this attitude between, is a family child care program better than a child care center, and what parents are thinking. And I know we have a couple of researchers on the phone, so chat into that chat box if you're like, wow, I've got the perfect research to share with you on that. And we'll also hold on to that question so that when we identify some good research, we can email it out to everybody on the phone.
Yeah, I know that there was research done previously, and parents usually talked about safety and their child being loved more so than the educational aspects. But I did hear somebody say the other day that we have done such a good job of educating parents about the importance of the early years, and then there's the focus on children starting in school at age 3 and preschools, and maybe we have given the message that because the early years are so critical, it needs to be a more formal, more academic setting, and obviously that's not the message we want to give. So again, it comes back to, and also the question too about different messages for different people. I think we need to have a very intentional approach to helping parents understand what quality child care looks like and how that can happen in every setting.
Absolutely. I'm getting lost in this amazing conversation in the chat box. And so I really want to thank everyone for diving in and talking in the chat box. And please know that the resources that you're putting in the chat box, we will share with the full group. I know that Julie, let's see, I was looking back at a couple of things. Pam Tatum in Georgia was talking about the fact that we might want to think about the recruitment strategy towards those providers who got into the field to take care of their own children and bring some other children into their home, and then they leave because now their children have outgrown their own program. And for those high-quality providers, is there a way to entice them to stay in? Hey, your children, your own personal children, or maybe your own personal grandchildren have aged out of your family child care home. But if you're a high-quality provider, how can we incent you to stay in and or mentor a new provider in your community to support your families? So I think that's, again, a really important thing to think about. And I just wanted to grab a couple more questions out of the chat box. Michelle, if I have a couple of more minutes, I think I have 4 more minutes to grab some of these. So I will just look at a few more. Juliet, thank you. Juliet Brommer is on the call, and we appreciate you being on the call. She's been working on a lot of research around the challenges around supply for family child care. And so I think she could probably share with us a lot of good research information that we can pass on to everybody on the call. So thank you, Juliet, for adding to that. She also made a comment in the chat box that says their study of child care networks, family child care networks, helping people navigate the systems is robust, and so we can provide people with more information on that. And she posted the link in the chat box, so thank you for that. And Lisa made a comment in the chat box that said that there are a lot of professions that require parents to work non-traditional extended hours, and she's asking what impact has this decline in family childcare had on them, and are they having to rely on family, friend, and neighbor care, or are we seeing any kind of pickup in family childcare providers who are able to support children and families through non-traditional hours and extended hours? So Nancy or Michelle, any information you can share with us on non-traditional family childcare programs?
Well, the one thing that I would add is that in my experience in Oklahoma, the child care centers who have expanded to evening or overnight hours have generally not been successful because families really struggle with young children being in a formal setting overnight. And so we really are very dependent on family child care homes for this population. And, you know, I think people do have to rely on family, friend, and neighbor care, but that can be a lot less reliable and certainly shorter term than a licensed provider. So I think that's a really important point, Lisa, that we need states and communities to really look at the employers in their area. And like you said, obviously those in the medical field, but if you're in a community with a lot of 24-hour work, that need is going to be tremendous, and you have to come up with some really effective strategies to build that supply.
Thanks, Nancy. And I know, Michelle, we need to continue to move on, so I'll hold some of these questions until the end. I do want to say that we, again, are having a great dialogue around whether or not we're seeing a shift in the demand for family child care, whether there's a preference. I think it's important that we continue to remind families and existing providers of the benefits of family child care as an alternative to a center. Again, we want to make sure that the settings that are available in your state are the right settings for the children and families. And we all know that there are many children who just flourish in a family child care home and feel a little bit lost in a center. And so how do we talk about the benefits of a smaller environment? And then there was also some chatting in around, again, this idea of technology, especially in our rural communities. And I think working through your quality initiatives in your state, those your child care licensing reps who are visiting programs, your quality people who are visiting programs, and making sure that they are always asking, is internet an issue for you? Are you having trouble accessing information? When someone calls up and says, hey, I want to apply, but I don't have internet access, how are we providing them with technical assistance, and how are we directing them and supporting them? I think those are all really great questions for us to be thinking about as we're putting together strategies to address these issues. So Michelle, I'm going to turn it back over to you to keep us moving along.
Thanks, Laura. I appreciate that. I would have to agree that ensuring that information is coming directly from providers and we're engaging them in the conversations is so critical. Because we're committed to continuous quality improvement, I'd like to pause here and have another poll question with you. We'd like to get a quick check from you on what you're finding to be helpful. On the second poll question, we'd like to know how much has your understanding of the decrease in family child care and strategies to address the availability of family child care improved? Okay, great. Thanks for that input. We'll go ahead and move on, Sarah, and thanks for posting the poll for us. Let's go ahead and move forward with our next presenter, Lacey Kottkamp. She's the Director of Child Care with the Indiana Office of Early Childhood and Out-of-School Learning. Hi, Lacey. I'm so glad you could join us today. We know that Indiana has implemented some successful and creative initiatives to support the retention of family child care providers. We'd love for you to tell us today about some of these initiatives that you've undertaken in the Indiana. Especially let us know about how you've engaged family child care providers, and if you can share any information about collaborations with other programs that help result in some of your successes. We'd love to hear about that.
Sure. Thanks, Michelle. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Yep. Good. Okay. So, hi, I'm Lacey Kottkamp. I work for the Office of Early Childhood and Out-of-School Learning with the Family and Social Services Administration in Indiana. So we have quite a few efforts in place now that works to recruit and retain family child care providers specifically. And they range from basic things like funding incentives to overall quality improvement capacity building projects. We provide accreditation supports, and then I wrote peer learning communities here, but in hindsight, I am going to provide some additional examples that we have implemented through our Child Care Resource and Referral Network. So I probably should have named that bullet a little bit differently. But so the first one is going to be what we do around funding incentives. Thank you. So we do several things around funding to try and recruit and retain family child care. So one thing specifically that I think is important to note is that family child care providers in Indiana are eligible to participate in our voluntary QRIS, which is called Paths to Quality in Indiana. There are standards in our QRIS that are specifically designed for family child care providers in mind. And so we did that intentionally because we know that the way you operate that program is very different than the way you would operate in a public school or in a licensed center, or in our state we have something called a registered ministry, and they also have separate standards to follow. So our QRIS also provides a tiered reimbursement at an increased rate that's based on the level attained on the QRIS. So we take our base market rate and then increase that by a certain percentage at every level of our QRIS past the level 1. So at 2, 3, and 4, you would get a tiered reimbursement. And because family child care providers are eligible to participate, they would also be receiving that tiered reimbursement. So that's sort of a built-in incentive there to be on our QRIS and participate in our system. And I should note, too, that one basic piece of information that you might need to know is that in Indiana, in order to be eligible at all for our QRIS, you must be licensed by our licensing unit here. So that does also incentivize them to become licensed and then participate in the QRIS. One other thing that we do with our QRIS is to incentivize not only family child care, but all providers. You do receive incentives for advancing through our QRIS. So our incentives include material packages, and they go all the way up through cash incentives. So we have On My Way Pre-K in Indiana, which is our state-funded pre-K program. In order to be eligible for On My Way Pre-K, you must be a level 3 or a level 4 on our QRIS. And family child care providers are eligible to participate as a provider in our state pre-K, which is something that was also really intentionally done because of our mixed delivery system here in Indiana. We wanted to ensure that all family needs would be met. And in our QRIS, there are several educational components built in that we thought fit nicely, that so long as a provider was maintaining or advancing at a level 3 or a level 4, that they could be eligible to be a pre-K provider. So to be a pre-K provider, the family child care providers will be receiving a higher reimbursement rate even above the QRIS tiered reimbursement. So again, we take that base market rate, we increase it based on your level. So at a level 3 or level 4, you're going to have a certain percentage of a reimbursement rate that's higher than the base. But then if you're a pre-K provider, for every child that you receive, that reimbursement rate is going to be 10% higher than, say, a level 3 or a level 4 reimbursement rate in that county. Okay, so this is fun. So one of our quality improvement and capacity building projects that we wanted to highlight was some work that we've been doing with a local philanthropic organization here in Indianapolis. How many counties? So this local organization serves 5 counties here around central Indiana. And they provide project management and coaching support for family child care providers with 2 main goals. 1, to increase the capacity of family child care providers in the target counties. And 2, to increase the quality by advancing the family child care providers up through the 4 levels of our QRIS here in Indiana. And so their work really starts with pre-licensure, and it goes all the way through licensure to a level 3 or 4 on paths to quality. This project provides ongoing intensive mentoring to programs to get them licensed and get them onto PTQ. So that's where the capacity building comes in. So they're going to be recruiting providers that may be in a mom's group, they're marketing, I serve 4 children. They might reach out and say, would you be willing to become licensed and participate in our cohort? And so I know that they've had success even just monitoring Facebook for some of those types of things and recruiting providers. Once they get providers signed on, they work with them, again, to get licensed and then move up the levels of paths to quality. They develop and implement quality improvement plans based on the standards of paths to quality. And then they assist with providing additional resources to support families and the children that they serve. They also engage directors with ongoing professional development and make sure that they're tying them to our local child care resource and referral agencies and other TNTA supports available within the state. Through the philanthropic partnership there, so that was all funded by CCDF, quality set aside, but one of the great things about partnering with a local philanthropic organization that has early childhood as a key priority is that they've been able to provide additional funding for things that we don't fund here out of our state set aside, and that includes capital improvements. And so those capital improvements are really some of the most important types of funding that are available to family child care, because if their home is not set up or is not built in a way that would make them able to get the home licensed for basic health and safety reasons, these capital improvements can be used to build on, renovate a room, maintain. We have a hot water valve thing that we do, adding fencing around the backyard, those types of things. So that's a really positive support that's available. And then the last piece in this quality improvement and capacity building project is their supports around business owner initiative services, which helps the sustainability of programs, intensive business coaching, and then they check in to verify financial management. So I think someone mentioned earlier the piece about collecting tuition and making sure that your finances help you remain sustainable. That's sort of the goal of this additional business owner initiative services. So then we move on. Yes, sure.
I just wanted to interrupt you real quickly and ask, who did you collaborate with or partner with on the business coaching?
So the local philanthropic organization is the United Way of Central Indiana.
Okay. So it was through the philanthropic organization. They were doing that for you. I was just trying to clarify that, so thank you.
Yes. So for the national accreditation supports, so the way that we currently structure our coaching supports here in Indiana is every person that signs on to Paths to Quality receives a coach regardless of their level or their status in terms of advancing or maintaining their PTQ status. So that includes family child care. But for a family child care provider who is a level 3 provider but who is looking to move to a level 4, they would receive advanced technical assistance that is available to them to help prepare for national accreditation. So level 4 of our QRIS, essentially if you're a nationally accredited program, you then are a level 4. That really is the standard for level 4. And so the coaching would be in place to help them move towards that level. We have 6 nationally accredited bodies that we approve in QRIS here in Indiana. And so those coaches will help them, depending on the accrediting body that they choose, they will be working towards that accrediting body. Once they are ready to apply for accreditation, we provide and cover all expenses for that application and the maintenance of that accreditation. And like I mentioned earlier, national accreditation makes family child care programs eligible for the highest level of our QRIS. Okay, so one thing that is administered locally through our CCR&Rs are peer learning communities. Topics in these peer learning communities range from things like business practices all the way to developmentally appropriate practice. Some of our peer learning communities across the state have up to 15 participants. And then there is a mentorship component of the peer learning communities. And so in a larger cohort with, say, 15 participants, there could be up to 4 mentors in that cohort. Our CCR&Rs are also doing some other work statewide to engage family child care, one of which would be to engage CDA cohorts with our statewide community college, Ivy Tech, here in Indiana. And those cohorts would essentially pull together family child care providers to help them and give them a space for sharing and networking as they work through their CDA together. So across our state, our CCR&Rs have additional partnerships with other local philanthropic bodies, like United Ways, local United Ways, and their Success by 6 grants. They have some local quality improvement initiatives in place across the state too, but those are privately funded. But we're certainly proud of our CCR&Rs and their partnership work that they've been able to do across the state. So for child care licensing in Indiana, we require all new programs or providers who are interested in becoming licensed to participate in an orientation training. So it essentially lay out licensing for them and then help them through the process of applying. And so we run that through our child care resource and referral agencies. They actually provide that training locally. And this training is separate for child care homes, ministries, and licensed centers. So they are all 3 separate trainings. And then our CCR&Rs, for every child care home provider that signs on, they receive business practices training that is targeted for those newly opened homes. And so when a new home opens, the hope is that these targeted trainings can help sustain the business and help them remain open for a longer period of time.
And I had one other question for you, Lacey. Do the child care resource and referral agencies and your other partners support professional development in addition to the business practices?
Yes.
So they have additional classes that are available during the weekends and in the evenings?
Absolutely. So our child care resource and referral agencies will oftentimes, not all of them, but many of them do host CDA trainings as a part of their services that they provide to their local service delivery area. We also fund through our Indiana Association for the Education of Young Children a non-formal CDA program where they've partnered with the Department of Workforce Development and the local Work One centers to pilot CDA through a 14-week course. Again, that's still in the pilot, but it's super exciting for those providers that are trying to wrap up their CDA much more quickly. But there's certainly a lot of innovative approaches happening locally around how to get those CDAs and make them accessible to providers and get them completed quickly.
Very exciting, a lot of strong work there. Thank you, Lacey, for sharing that.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you, Lacey. It's exciting to hear about Indiana's work around supporting family child care. And I think we have a few more questions, Michelle, if it's okay if we take a little bit of time to ask some questions. Yes. So I also want to go back to something that Lacey said about, supporting and working with workforce development providers in your communities. So definitely, as people are thinking about what partners can help us recruit and retain family child care providers, please don't forget about your local departments of labor and your workforce development initiatives in your state, and pick up the phone and call them and say, hey, you're looking to help people get into workforce. We need a workforce. So how can we partner together? And the Early Childhood Quality Assurance Center that we represent, we have a really dynamic, free training of trainers to support business practices for family child care providers, that we could make sure that we provide a training of trainers to your state, to whatever organization wants to have that training, so that then they can carry it on to people you're recruiting into family child care, to give them that foundation of knowledge and skills that they need to run a business, or to help some of your family child care providers who are frankly struggling in managing their business and really putting together fiscal practices that support their viability. So that's something that your free TA system can provide to your state, and so we would be happy to do that. And then a lot of people are chatting in about the partnership with United Way and other philanthropic organizations. I think we have some great examples across the state of partnerships with United Ways. And so again, reaching out to your local United Way and talking to them about their early childhood initiatives and their giving strategies, and talking to them about who their philanthropic partners are. For many United Ways, they work with other funders to pool money together. And so if they could share who those funders are in your community who are interested in early care and education, then you can reach out to them and say, hey, here's our need, and here's why it's a benefit for you to help us make sure that our community has high quality family child care as an option for our families. So you can definitely reach out through your local United Way agency to connect to other philanthropic agencies. We did have a question about where we could, a question about the impact of pre-K. And as we have increased public investment in pre-K, there's a question about how has that affected the investment in family child care? And are people kind of feeling like, hey, we can get more money by having pre-K classrooms and being a pre-K site? And so does that decrease the opportunities for infant and toddler care and non-traditional hour care? So I'm wondering if people can chat in the chat box to Natalie some of their state strategies regarding making sure there's a good balance of quality care for our preschoolers as well as our infants and toddlers. And there was another question about people sharing their experience around quality networks and how those quality networks are supporting programs that are specifically serving infants and toddlers. And I don't know if we have any of the State Capacity Building Center infant toddler specialists on the phone, but I wonder if you all can share any examples of infant toddler networks that are really targeted in on supporting their state communities around infant toddler quality, professional development for infant toddler care providers, and any resources that you want to share with us that we can pass on that. But I do know that many states now have robust infant toddler specialist networks who can provide technical assistance, professional development, coaching, support through application processes, et cetera, to family child care providers who are specifically thinking about serving an infant toddler population. So check in with your state's local infant toddler network. If you don't have one, we can put you in touch with the State Capacity Building Center, who can talk to you about how you would form an infant toddler specialist network. Tony Porter asked, do family child providers who complete their CDAs in Indiana have a higher reimbursement rate? So I was wondering, Lacey, if you're still on the line, if you could let us know if once I have my CDA or a higher education attainment, does that boost up my reimbursement?
Yeah, so in Indiana, in order to be licensed as a family child care provider, you are required to have a CDA per initial licensing requirement. So essentially, the answer is yes, because you can't become licensed or participate in QRIS without a CDA. But no, not beyond the base rate or the increased tiered reimbursement for QRIS. It would not be beyond that. It would just be you do have to have it to become licensed. And I would just add to the business practice training that was mentioned, strengthening business practices through the State Capacity Building Center. Indiana piloted that. And so that is what our child care resource and referral agencies are using as a part of the OT2 trainings for family child care licensing.
Thanks, Lacey. Thanks for adding that to the conversation. I'm wondering if there are states who do provide some additional reimbursement to family child providers who are increasing their education, whether it be through your Teach Scholarship program or incentive program you have. So are there some educational incentives for family child care providers? And if you'll chat in the chat box, we can raise those. Thanks, April, for answering the chat box. She said that Washington is looking at doing needs-based grants to support infant toddler providers who are in the QRIS in order to support infant toddler learning environments, specifically for family child cares and centers. So that's great to know. And again, we'll make sure that people get information based on your questions in the follow-up email. So if we can, April, if you have any more information from that, we can link out to that information so that people can see that. So thank you for sharing that. And another question for you, Lacey, if I could have another minute. Diane in Pennsylvania wanted to know, does the state provide support to individuals to help them obtain their CDA certificate? So prior to operating, so prior to getting their license, this is a great question. What are we doing on the front end? You need your CDA to get a license. I can't afford my CDA. Does anybody offer something? And Lacey, do you offer something that would help me pay for that cost, or at least get into a scholarship opportunity perhaps that I could apply for?
Yeah, so as a part of our TEACH program, we do cover CDA costs and then also through our non-formal CDA. However, you do have to be working as a family child care provider. But through our capacity building project with the United Way of Central Indiana, their philanthropic dollars do actually cover the provider that's working the quality continuum. They do cover that CDA up front.
Great. And I do know that, again, as you're talking to your Department of Labor's and your Workforce Development Initiative, really start chatting with them about apprenticeship programs, because, again, in many states and territories, you have to be in the system to access the benefits of the system. So just thinking about, like, the educational cost to get a CDA, apprenticeship programs are asked a little bit different. You can be earning your education, and they can place you in an environment where you can be getting your experiential learning. So that could be an option in your state if you're finding that recruitment is difficult because of the cost of the educational opportunity. There was also a question about limiting how many family child care programs can enter into the QRIS. So I had not heard about this, but it appears that in some states, people want to join the QRIS, want to join their quality initiative, but because of the high demand, there's a wait list for support to enter that system. So if that's the case in your state, we would love to hear about that. Is that going on in Indiana, or is it easy to get access to the quality programs?
Okay, sorry, I was taking a note, and so I missed the question. My team here had to fill me in. So, no, there's no waiting list in Indiana in terms of if a program wants to become licensed, they become licensed. They just add to the workflow for our licensing consultants, and they work it. And I don't think it's been a huge issue in our state in terms of incoming programs. And there's also no waiting list for QRIS. If you just, there's an intro session for QRIS, and if you take it, then you can sign on at a level 1.
Great. And we have a lot of people who are excited about getting information in the chat box about initiatives to support family child care providers who are focused on infants and toddlers. Arizona offers a startup of $500 through, though we found that most providers were closing down after the first year since the support isn't continually offered. So it's a startup fee, but then it's not an ongoing fee, which presents a challenge. So a couple of people are asking Michelle about the chat box. We will send the PowerPoint out, and you'll be able to get and you'll be able to hear a recording of the PowerPoint. Michelle, have we been sending out the chat box?
We're going to be reaching out to the folks that participated in the chat box, having a dialogue with each other, and we'll be reaching out to see if they want to continue the dialogue in a type of community practice. So we'll be doing that this upcoming week and get a feel for who would like to continue the conversation in a group that is already connected with each other.
Great, thanks. And that makes me think about, Michelle, that earlier poll that you did, and it sounded like in that poll that people actually had a really good foundation of knowledge about the situation that we're in with the decrease, but it sounds like the real reason people are here is to chat with each other and support each other and help each other with new ideas and new strategies. And so I'm excited that we'll have an opportunity for you all to continue this conversation through a community of practice so that we can keep the dialogue going and so you can all support each other. So Nancy, I was hoping that maybe we could switch gears now and have you talk about additional strategies that states and territories might consider in increasing the supply of family child care, and if you could share some of those with us.
Sure. And several of you mentioned some of these strategies earlier, so I'll just try to summarize them quickly. Creating a family child care network. As most of you know, these are usually offered in local communities. They are really strong in providing services in multiple languages where needed. They are led by trainers and coaches with specialized training in supporting family child care providers in culturally responsive ways. They offer a lot of benefits. Some of those are peer support, training, mentoring. I love those that provide access to substitutes because that can really be a challenge for family child care, and has been mentioned the fiscal and management support. So just a quick reminder that the ECQA Center has great resources available on both developing a family child care network and on projecting the costs. So if you'd like to explore this option, TA is available on that. Secondly, encourage family child care associations and peer support. So if you don't have a network, these associations are usually voluntary and they're membership-based, and they do a wonderful job of providing peer support as well as access to training and resources. And, you know, in some communities, they bubble up with the leadership of a few providers. In other communities, they're supported by child care resource and referral, I think, as Lacey described. Expand professional development opportunities, and we talked a little bit about also providing the financial assistance that providers need to access professional development and credentials and degrees. I think what I would add to that is just that we always have to remember that these opportunities have to meet the unique needs of family child care providers if they're going to be successful. So that means training has to be offered at locations that are convenient. And earlier we mentioned online learning, so making sure that that's accessible, or during hours that family child care providers can attend, that training is in languages they speak, and really important in the topics that they can benefit from, such as caring for mixed age groups or improving business practices. I hope that you all are aware of the training that the ECQA Center developed on strengthening business practices, because there is a track or version of that training specific for family child care. And I just think we all know that training designed for center-based teachers may not meet the needs of family child care providers and oftentimes leave them feeling not valued or understood. The Shared Services Alliances somebody mentioned, that's getting a lot of attention across states. Shared Services Alliances can support a network of providers that want to share the cost for administrative services. So things like fee collection or billing or other types of record keeping, again, maintaining the substitute pools, bulk purchasing. They often charge a small membership fee. They operate at the local level. Sometimes family child care networks operate them, or a CCR&R or other entity. And many also focus on professional development, mentoring, and coaching. So a lot of really wonderful strategies, and there are really good resources on the development of all of these. And so I think the last thing I would just mention is if you're in a state with a large number of licensed exempt providers, you should also consider implementing some of these initiatives aimed at strengthening and maintaining the quality of those settings, because we're finding that licensed exempt family child care can really help meet the unmet child care needs and help to address this decline in providers.
Thank you so much, Nancy, for being with us today and then sharing the information that you've learned and compiled. Such great information that we can carry forward, and it's really precipitated a lot of chat in the dialogue box, so we are thankful for that. We have another survey question for our participants. If you just take a short minute to answer this third poll question that we have. And in this poll question, we'd like to know, how likely are you to use at least one of the strategies or practices that Nancy and Lacey shared today? That's great. It looks like most of you are definitely going to consider exploring one of the strategies that they've introduced today, so that's exciting information. If you'd like to know more information about a specific strategy or want to connect with Lacey about their process and projects in Indiana, go ahead and put that in the chat box and we'll facilitate connections with both Lacey and Nancy and continue to share information with you. Before we close for today, I'd like to share a technical assistance opportunity. Laura's already mentioned this, but I just wanted to reiterate that we'll be continuing to offer technical assistance for states, territories, and tribes. And if you're registered for this webinar, you'll receive an email that will describe some of the TA opportunities. We encourage policymakers and service providers to contact us if you're interested in understanding about family child care landscape in your state, or you want to implement some of the strategies that we've talked about today. Access and complete the interest questionnaire at the link that's included in the email we'll be sending you, or simply reach out to us directly for technical assistance tailored to meet your needs. You can call us or email us. And if you missed our first webinar on family child care, you can now access the PowerPoint at the link in the chat box. Sarah will be providing that for us. The recording of that first webinar will be posted within the next few days. And the recording and the PowerPoint for this webinar will be posted in the next couple of weeks, and we'll be sending out the link for those products in the email that we'll follow up with you all. Again, look for our brief coming out later this spring on addressing the decreasing number of family child care providers, and additional resources that Nancy has mentioned today that have been produced by the ECQA Center and are posted on our website. And again, feel free to contact us directly or by email if we can support you in your efforts to support families and family child care providers. So thank you for joining us today, and if you will, please take one more minute to respond to our final survey question so we can continue to improve our resources and our support for states, territories, and tribes. We really do value and appreciate your input.
Thanks again, everyone, for participating. We look forward to hearing from you about what other additional resources and follow-up you need, and we're excited to continue this dialogue with you through opportunities for community of practices. So thanks, everyone, and have a great afternoon or rest of your day.